Okay, good morning, everyone. What I'm going to show you today, how we actually minimize our effort when we're writing programs. Instead of doing something very complex, maybe we can simplify it. There's a concept in programming called functions, and a function is basically how we break our program into smaller pieces so we reduce our effort. Now, if I will start with a problem, for example, if I give you an assignment to draw these shapes, random shapes, different places, and with the skills that you already know already, only what we have known already, which is to be able to draw a square. It looks like I have to draw this square, then draw another square, and then draw another square, but I have to repeat the code over and over again. To draw the square, I repeat the code. To draw the square, I repeat the code, but I change the color, maybe change the position. So how do we make programs that are efficient in terms of breaking the problem into smaller problem and avoid repeating code? All right. So we're going to start with a new program. And I've created one called, just make sure that I'm recording. Okay. I've created one that is called function one. We created it together. And this one is a simple program. All it does is just simply draw this shape, the square on the screen. Okay, so it just draw that one. But this one draws one square and the same color. If I wanted to draw another square, different location, what would I have to do? First, I have to basically take this code and repeat it again, and then change my position. So let's do that. For example, if I want to draw another one, I will have to do command copy to all of this, and then command V. But before I do that, if I run it again, basically you're drawing the same square over each other. I have to change the position. Now, we have learned how to change positions before, right? We did, for example, we have to say t.pin up, and then go to, and then we say t.go to, and then we go to a particular point. For example, if I want to go to point minus 50, and let's say minus 100 and 100 or 0. So to the left of my x, okay? And then what do? I simply, after that, I say 10 pin down, okay? We've done these before, okay? So now I draw two squares, the first one here and the first one in here next to it, right? And I can do this as many times as I want to. But the problem with doing that is that if I wanted to change anything with these squares, I'll have to find the code to change it, and I have to, then there are possibility to make errors. There is a concept in this function, in this Python, that says, oh, I can create my own function. Every time I want to draw a square, I just simply say, draw a square. We call it, we create this function, and every time I want to draw a square, I tell it to draw a square. All right? So how do we do that? How do we create these functions? First, to create a function in Python, you need to use the language again that is specific to Python. First, we can say def or definition. That's the start of your defining a function. Now, where do you define a function? Now, you can't use a function before you define it. So the best thing to do is that you define your function at the beginning of your program. That way, if you want to use it later on, it's already defined. Okay, so what I've done here, I need to define my function. Now, when you're defining a function, you need to give it a name. That name is flexible. You can give it whatever name you want. I can say, for example, draw square, like that. Or just simply square. Anything that you want, as long as it does not have spaces and it doesn't start with a number, just like we did previously with what? With the variable numbers. So I can just call it, for now, square, just for simplicity. Okay? Now, a function can receive input in the form of variables, and that's what we call parameters. Okay? Sometimes you don't need parameters. Sometimes you do need parameters. At the beginning, we require no parameters. We say no parameters, all right? So I'm going to say this function only draws square. So nothing in these brackets. Now, just like we did with the if statement, with the for statement, you need to tell it that it has many things underneath it. This function contains many things underneath it. So I need to define, I put this colon after the brackets. So now everything, notice, is shifted a little bit inward. So everything that I put in here is part of a function, belongs to that function, all right? So now I got this code here, right? I have this code. I want it to be part of that function. I want it to be executed, or I want it to, every time I say square, I want it to draw something for me. So how do I do that? I make these part of this, if it's this function. How do we make it this part of this function? Just simply go to it, delete the spaces in between, and hit tab. Just like we did with the for statement, remember? Now, all of these code, all of these, actually what? Part of that function. They belong to that function. So that means that every time, how we remember, we actually have been using function. Like when we say t.forward, actually we're calling a function inside the turtle package. When we say t.pin up, we're calling a function inside of the package, the turtle package. All these are functions, but now we're creating our own function, and that is called square. All right? I'm not going to need this anymore, and I'll show you why. I can delete this. Why? Because the code to draw a square already with me. I already have it. If I wanted to draw a square, I just simply say square, and it would draw it for me, depending on that position. Now watch what happens. Now if I run this, it wouldn't draw anything. Why? I'll show you why. It goes to here because first thing it does this, it does this, it does this. How about this, all of this? Why did not do any of this? It didn't do any of this because this is part of this small program. So think about it, a program inside of a program. And in order to run it, we have to call it. How do I call it? Watch. Now I can say simply square, the name of the function. Just like that. What does it do? What does it do? What it does, it looks for this name. It says, do you have a function called square? Do I have a function called square? I do. So it goes, okay, you want me to do something for you. It goes to this command function and start doing these things inside that function. What does it do? It draws basically a square. You get the idea? Now watch what happens. If I run it, it draws the square. What if we wanted to draw another square? What do I need to do? All I need to do is just simply do what? Call that square again. So if I do square again, watch what happens. Run it again. Now I got another function, another square. Is that easier? Is it better? I don't have to repeat the code, right? It's only done once. That reduces the number of error, right? And I only do it once. Remember when we talked about composition, decomposition, breaking the problem into smaller problem? Now I broke the problem into drawing squares. And all I have to do is that every time I wanted to draw a square, I just simply call it. What if we want to draw another square? What can I do? Can I repeat the same thing? go to a different position, and then this is the part that goes to a different position, for example. This is a different position. All I have to do, for example, copy this and go somewhere else. I'll show you in a minute. Command V, go somewhere else, and now square again. Now I got, instead of minus 100, let's make it 100. Okay, and now I got 3 squares. You see that? Can you use this to draw a car like when we did, we draw a car? Becomes very easy. All you have to do is change positions, right? All right, I'm gonna pause for a minute and give you a chance to practice it. Make sure that you got it to work. Okay, now we've got the first part. I've seen common mistakes that you did. Some of the common mistakes that you've seen, this, you didn't have space in front of this. This is, you need, if you want to make something part of a function, it has to be indented. أو في spaces قبلها, okay? So that is a common mistake. The other mistake that I've seen, and if you type in space in front of this Python is case sensitive. You cannot have spaces before it, okay? That's the problem, all right? So make sure it starts at the first space, all right? Otherwise, it would think it's part of the function, and it would not work, all right? That is common mistakes. Now, let's start with this, make it a little bit better. Now, these are what? What colors are they printing? I mean, what color are these boxes? They're black. What if I wanted to draw different colors based on what I want? We need to change the color, right? So how do I tell it, when I draw the square, I also wanted to tell it what color that square is. And that, what we call parameters. We can pass values to this function. We call those parameters, variables. So for example, I can pass a variable name here called color, like that. Okay, I'm just gonna make it actually different name so you understand it. Color, CLR. It's a variable name. This variable name depends on what you pass to it, what value to pass to it. Remember when we talked about variable, we have numbers and strings. Now it depends on what you pass to this string. So this is input to the function. And that input, we can use it inside our function. We can use this input inside our function. How do we use it in our function? We basically simply use the same name that I define. You can pass multiple values. For now, I'm going to only pass one value. So I can say, for example, to change the color, simply say what? T dot what? Color. Remember that? And then I need to give it a value. What color do I want? The value depends on the whatever is passed to this function, the input of this function. So in this case, I will use the same variable name, which is CLR. So here it will be CLR. So if I pass red, the color will be red. If I pass green, the color will be green. You get it? All right, let's test it. Before, if I run this, I will get an error because the error says you're trying to call a function, but this function requires input, requires parameters. Before, we didn't have that error. Why do we have this error now? Because now I changed the definition of this function. Now it says you need to give me value in order to use this function. So what kind of value that I want? We want to pass the color. So if I want to draw a red color, a red square, I can type in red here. You get it? If I wanted to draw a green, I can type in green here. If I wanted to draw a blue, I can draw a blue like this here. Okay? Now that error will disappear now. Why? Because I am calling the function the proper way. I'm calling the function the proper way. Means if it requires input, I have to give it input. So now if I run it, watch. The first one will be what? Red. The second one will be green. And the third one is blue. You understand? And that is called parameters. We can pass value to these functions. In this case, we're only defining one function, one parameter. And that parameter is the color of that square. All right, let me pause for a minute and give you a chance to try it. Okay, Sabaya. So now what we're doing, we created only one function, and that function has one responsibility. What is the responsibility of that function? To draw a square. What about, do you notice something here? Is this repeated or not repeated? Every time I want to go to another place, what do I have to do? Copy the code again and paste it. Can we do a function instead? Can I create a function that tells me if I wanted to go to one point, I'll just say move to, and I tell it the position that I wanted to move to, instead of doing pin up, pin down, and then go to? Can we do that? We can. Same idea. How do I do it? We just created a function that does what? To draw a square. I can create another function. How do I create another function? We create another function using the same thing. Def for definition. And then what? The name of the function that I want. We want to call a function called move to. I want it to go to a particular point. And then I can call it move to, like this. I'm giving it the name. Now when we move to, if we wanted to move to a particular point on the screen, what do I have to give it? Coordinates. In this case, the coordinates are what? X and Y, right? So I need to give it input. And that input is called X and Y. Now you can give it any name you want, but you want to make, when you name these parameters, these variables, you want it to make them descriptive. Meaning what? It means that when I read it, I understand what they are. So in this case, when we want to move to a particular point. So usually it is X and Y. Now, because it's a function, I have to have what? That colon, right? So I'll put the colon. What is the code that goes in here? Basically the same code here, right? This code, which is what? Pin up, pin down, and go to. So I can do this. I can remove it from here and then paste it in here. So what happens? I can just simply now tab, tab. So those three commands are part what? Are part of the function. Those three commands are part of the function. Now, there is one thing that we have to change. What do you think we have to change in here? Instead of these numbers, what do we put? X and Y, right? Just like we did with the color, these are input to this function. I want to use them inside that function. So how do we use them? We say, I want to go now to X and Y. You get the idea? All right. So I have these three commands. I have these three squares. Okay. Do I need this anymore? Do I need to say pin down, pin up? No. What do we do instead? We simply use the function that we created, which is what? Move to. So for now, if I wanted to draw a square in a different place, I can just say move to, it's already there, and I give it the point that I wanted to go to. Where I want to go, masalan, -100, and 0. Okay? And then the last one, I wanted to go, for example, I can say square. Sorry, move to another point before I start drawing. I can go to 100, 0. 2 parameters. The first value will go to X. The second value will go to Y. All right? Same thing in here. First value go to X, and second value goes to Y. Now, if I run it, what happens? I got the same thing. You see that? But my code is a lot more efficient. My program is a lot more smaller. If I have a problem, I can find this problem easily by modifying the code, by modifying it in one place. You understand the functions, how you use functions, right? Let me pause it one more time and let you try it. Okay, so that was the first part, how we created 2 functions, one to draw a square and one to draw, to move to a particular point. Now, we can do more because the square always draws a square. Maybe we wanted to actually have the flexibility to tell it the width and the height of this. Instead of just a square, we can do a rectangle. Okay, so how to define another function to draw a rectangle, and we pass to it the width and the height. Now, squares and rectangles are the same, except that what? The rectangle have different sizes of width and length, right? So can we do something similar here? We can. So what we can do, I can, for example, say, copy this command, all of this, and paste it before or after, doesn't matter. I would do it before because there's nothing after it. It would be easier. And now I need to change the name. We can't use the same name because the same name, it will be a problem. You can't have 2 functions with the same name, like defining a variable with the same name. So instead of this, I'm going to say rectangle. Now, a rectangle, in addition to the color, requires width and length. So how do I pass more information to this function? How? We can say, for example, comma, W is for the length, and comma, L for the length. All right? Now, I can use this in my program. Instead of every time put 100 here, the first thing I draw is my width. And the second thing here is my length. And here is my width. And here is my length. Now I have 3 functions. One just to draw a square with the fixed size, 100. One with a rectangle with actually have width and length. All right? Everything else stays the same logic. Now, all I want to do, if I want to draw a rectangle, just simply call that function called rectangle. How do we do it? At the end, we already have some of that code that calls a square. Maybe now I can do this. Command copy, Command V, and instead of 100, 100, maybe I want to go to a point, the start point, which is 0, 0. And instead of square, we can use here what? Rectangle. Here it is. But the rectangles require me to pass 3 information. It requires 3 input. Not just the color, it also requires the width and the height. So if I make this is 100, not 100, let's say make it 40, and the length is 70, it would draw a rectangle with that size and with that color. What point? At point 0, 0. Now I changed the speed a little bit so I'll make it faster. So here you'll see, now it draw a rectangle here at this position. That is different than the square. It gives me more flexibility. If I want to draw another rectangle somewhere else, I repeat the same process. I can command copy and command V, and I just go to another point, for example, 100, 100, and I can draw red rectangle, and then I give it different sizes. For example, I can make it 10 for the 100 for the width, and then the length is only 50. And now I can run it. You'll see that it drew that rectangle at the top here. Okay? Now, you can say, why are we doing this? But you can see this decomposition, divide and conquer. If I want to draw a rectangle, I have a function, I have a command to draw a rectangle. If I want to draw a square, I have a command to draw a square. If I want to move to a particular point, I use a command to move to. Now, if I ask you to draw a building using this command, would it be easier now? A lot easier, because I don't have to think. All I need to do is call the rectangle and change position. Call a rectangle and change position. Is that clear? All I have to do is just do the little bit of calculation where I'm going to draw these things. All right? That is a summary or an introduction about functions. In the next part, I'm going to show you that we can use function not only to draw things, we can use functions to do complex calculations and return the values. That would be in part 2. All right? So I'm going to stop this recording for now, and we'll start another one.